But we're working with the Alumni Association as it were for an event on Wednesday, May 24th. That'll be at Lawrence Technological University. See, I can say it right there, Matt.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
the moderator, let me see, the moderator's name. I got to think for a second. Oh, it's Matt Roush is the moderator. That's right.
Okay.
Yes. And so it's a morning. Well, it's not a breakfast is included, but it's a morning panel that ends around noonish. And luckily it's the Wednesday before Memorial Day. We picked that on purpose because after that, we got 90-day summer in Michigan. Forget it, no meetings, right? And so I'll be looking at powering EVs. Now, the reason we bring that up is obviously we've been talking about the electrical grid and how strained it already is. There's projections that 1 million more vehicles, EVs that is, will be plugged into the grid over the next 5 or so years. And that's question is that a good idea? So we'll be looking at alternatives. For instance, we hope to get Toyota on the panel. And one of the things they're real big on is they're going to still keep doing hybrids. Hybrids is, of course, if you're just commuting around for 100 or 200 miles, you're on electricity. But if you want to drive across the state or go across country, you can use gasoline-powered engines. And they're also looking at hydrogen fuel cells. So the different spin on it. We'll hope to get GM on the panel as well. GM is committed by 2035 to have all electric vehicles. So that'll be interesting. Again, I mean, we know from our experience with ITC and with the various power generators, it takes 4, 5, 6 years to get this stuff all planned out and up and running. So it's not like you can do it at the drop of a hat. And with these two, we were just discussing the power failures earlier in the show. Well, of course, bad weather happens, but with climate change increasingly, the weather's getting worse and worse. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with that, right, Matt?
No, I don't think so at all. It's, what are so-called 100-year storms, 100-year rainfalls are happening every 5 or 10 years now, sometimes, every other year. And what storms there's just with more water vapor in the atmosphere and warmer temperatures, the atmospheric events you get are going to be more intense. So, we have to plan for that on the grid as well. What I always wanted to know is when, at what point does range anxiety go away? How far do like 90% of people want to be able to drive in a day? When I go on a long road trip, for me, it's somewhere between 400 and 500 miles. After that, I just don't want to drive anymore that day. I'm looking for a place to stay for the night. So it'll be interesting to talk to the car companies about what they see as the ultimate end of range anxiety. And also, I think, hybrids, nobody's talking about hybrids, and I think that's an interesting play on Toyota's part. I drove, right when they first came out, I drove a Chevy Volt, which was a very limited electric vehicle. I mean, the EV range on that thing on a full charge was only 15 or 20 miles, which actually for most people is enough for a commute to work. But after that, it had this little sewing machine, 800cc or 1000cc gasoline engine in it that basically was just there to charge the battery, to keep the battery charged on an ongoing basis. So you could drive it clear across the country if you wanted to, without stopping. And I think that's even though not very many people do that, I think a lot of people like the idea of being able to do that. So, where do those people fit in an electric vehicle future? And then the whole idea of the grid. I just saw something over the weekend that they're saying, well, if everybody charges at night, that's a really bad idea because it's going to put a lot of strain on the grid. It means the grid will be busy around the clock. So, where do we charge these things? Do we do it during the day at work? Do we do it at home at night? And how is all this going to fit together in the next, they're talking 5 years, 10 years, 2035 is not that far away.
Sure isn't. I'll tell you, it's interesting. Again, guys, thanks for having me here today. I thought this was one of the biggest topics since, the assembly line. I mean, with all the money being spent and all the stuff being thrown around, I think we were all super excited to talk about this powering EVs, not to mention, the critical materials like, lithium and nickel and cobalt. Do we have enough of that? The myths and so forth about, how soon we'll have public acceptance to this. What's the cost? What's the affordability aspect of electric vehicles? It's just a lot of exciting things. I think we'll be peeling the onion on
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and
was.
I'm good, Matt.
No, I was just going to mention I was at an IEEE Southeastern Michigan section event at Lawrence Tech last week, where they introduced a company called Our Next Energy, or ONE, or One, and they are working on an alternative battery chemistry that doesn't involve cobalt, which I guess is sourced mostly from one place with really questionable ethics. Nobody ever came right out and said where that was, but take a guess. And so if we could avoid stuff like that, that I think would make it more interesting too. And you'd feel better about buying an electric car if they could work that out. So and there's a lot of players working on really advanced battery chemistry, and there's a company in Clare that's even getting a lot of mileage out of good old lead acid. So there are alternatives out there.
Well,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Go ahead.
Go
I was just saying, also a friend of mine, Steve Braddock, is developing an EV system that's mobile and uses natural gas or butane rather than plugging into the electrical grid. So there's lots of possibilities out there. But go ahead, Jen. And this is more than just a morning event. Why don't you talk about that? I'm trying not to be the salesman here, so.
Well, it's so true. What we realize from talking to people that are involved in the space, there's a lot of layers to the onion to peel off. And so an event is just the beginning. I mean, this is a whole program. So what we're doing with our program is allowing people to actually talk in the print, interviews on MITech TV, in another publication called Global Auto Mobility and Smart Mobility Today, and carry their message, to the eyeballs and ears that we're all familiar with of different people out there that can learn more about it in depth. So this is not only, an event, it's content. And of course, the big thing that everyone loves is the networking that they'll be able to do at the event with different people that they can partner with, over time. So we're really excited about it. My big, thing when I think about this whole thing in my position here, I'm the director of business development, if you haven't figured that out yet. And one of the things that I want to tell you, it's not too late to obtain sponsorships and potentially speaking opportunities. So whether you're in consulting, battery charging, EV job creation, you're talking about the grid, how about legal regulations? All of those things are up, in the air. And bottom line is, if you are a viewer right now and you believe you have expertise that can contribute to this conversation, we want to hear from you. And you would just go to globalautomobility.com, click on the big banner that says Powering Electric Vehicles, and send me an email, and then we'll be able to talk to you.
All right, so tell me a little bit about what we're looking at in terms of the date and time. Once again, the venue is the gallery at Lawrence Technological Universities. It's called the University Technology and Learning Center. There's plenty of parking just off a 10-mile road there and a couple of big parking lots. But tell me a little bit about the format and the timing of this event, the date and time.
Well, the cool thing about it is it's a perfect time. I think the last guest said it started at 8:30. Ours begins at 8:30 as well. So it's 8:30 to 11:15 is the time. The date is May the 24th. May the 24th from 8:30 in the morning to 11:15ish. And then we can scurry right back to our next regular scheduled meeting, right?